Season 10 update for COD Mobile has arrived, and that means that we've got buffs and nerfs that are going to determine our new top 10 guns in COD Mobile. If you want to see more COD Mobile content like this, make sure to subscribe and we'll hop in the action. To get things started, I do want to give a couple honorable mentions because it is ridiculously competitive in the top 10 guns this season, and there's a few that I feel at least deserve a shout, especially as far as the numbers go. I don't think they're top 10 guns, but definitely still worth giving a try. The Bison is still a ridiculously easy to use option, and the Argus in the hands of the right player can be one of the best guns in the game, but both have big downsides, so I couldn't justify putting them in the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is a gun that, even though it's still incredibly popular with pro players, by the numbers doesn't really seem to match up against the top guns, and I think there are much better alternatives. The LK is still a very solid option in Season 10. Some people might disagree with this one, but the LK24 gets outclassed by the KN in pretty much every category possible with the exception of its recoil. With that being said, the KN's recoil is incredibly controllable within the first 10 shots and has a way cleaner iron sight, which means you can have an extra attachment slot to allow you to have a lot more options. It's got better mobility, better bullet spread accuracy, and is nearly identical in every other category. I'm curious to see if maybe some of these pro players start to pass up the LK for some better options, but who knows? Maybe they know something that we don't. Because of the nerf to the LK24 last season, you want to maximize bullet spread accuracy as much as possible, which means monolithic suppressor is not really an option. And unfortunately, unlike the KN, the LK has really bad iron sight, so I would definitely recommend using a red dot as well. Coming in at number 9 is a gun that got a really big buff in the recent update, but despite that, I still didn't feel like it was solid enough to really be anywhere above where it is right here. The CX9 got a mythic version last season, so most people expected that it would be receiving a buff, and to be honest, it needed one because outside of 18 meters, the gun was pretty much useless. It's meant to be basically an easier to use version of the Fennec, and to be honest, I think it serves that purpose well. I do actually have the CX9 above the Fennec now simply because the base version has way better iron sights and has much lower recoil, which makes it a lot more viable for the average player. It does have a slightly slower rate of fire than the Fennec and also has a bullet speed statistic, which is going to hamper it a little bit, but thanks to the bullet speed buff that I got this season, it's not going to be nearly as much of a factor. And when you compound that with the fact that there's a mythic version with the pay-to-win iron sight, this thing is ridiculously powerful up close. The CX38 barrels both got a buff this season, so one of those would be a solid option. I prefer the one that comes with the suppressor on it, and even though the 50-round drum mag did get a buff, I still like to run sleight of hand with it to try to maximize some of that reload speed. Coming in at number 8 is a gun that we just got finished talking about, one that I would argue is the better alternative to the LK24 right now, especially in the hands of a free-to-play player. The KN44 is an incredibly underrated option whenever it comes to a long-range assault rifle, only having 1 millisecond slower rate of fire than the LK. Outside of the recoil, it surpasses it in every statistic possible. Thanks to its clean iron sights, there's also a lot of different ways that you can build out the KN44, including a muzzle that gives a ridiculous amount of horizontal recoil control. So if you're really struggling with that extra little bit of horizontal recoil, there are ways to compensate for it. While I wouldn't say it's the best AR in the game, the KN is one that I really think people are going to start to use more and more as the season progresses. This KN build is one that's meant for maximum bullet spread accuracy, and with a starting bullet spread accuracy of 3, there aren't many guns that are going to be able to touch it. With that being said, if you want to build a little bit more for an aggressive build, the no stock attachment is not a bad option, or if you want to go really psycho mode, you can go max range with a monolithic suppressor and marksman and see what you can do. Coming in at number 7 are 2 guns that, because there's been so much debate around them over the past couple of seasons, I decided to throw them into the same spot. We've got the CBR and the Cordite. Especially after the BSA nerf to the CBR, the Cordite became a much more viable option because it's a lot more versatile in the ways that you can build it out. With the CBR, there's not a whole lot of potential options as far as attachments you can use. The two have identical rate of fires, very similar damage values, and very similar ranges as well. Now, personally, I would argue that the Cordite is better because it has the potential for an 80-round magazine, a monolithic suppressor that gives you an extra 25% damage range as compared to the lesser damage range on the CBR, and much better potential bullet spread accuracy as well. With that being said, if you're looking to be uber aggressive, the CBR is a super solid option, and given the fact that you don't need to throw an extra magazine attachment on there, it's definitely going to be a go-to comfort weapon for a lot of people who have been using it for however long it was meta in the game. If you need a good Cordite build, I would recommend this one for a nice in-between on range, bullet capacity, and a little extra strafe speed on there as well. For the CBR, I feel like I don't need to explain a whole lot because we've been using the same build for the last year and a half. Coming in at the number 6 spot is the number 1 LMG in the game. The UL736 takes the top spot, which anybody who's been watching my top 10 guns video for a while already knows. The gun's 3-tap potential makes it ridiculous ridiculously consistent over long ranges when if you stack up the range, you can 3-tap all the way out at 40 meters. 3 upper body shots or 1 headshot, and shots anywhere else on the body will guarantee a 3-shot for this weapon, which is a big reason why so many pro players have been using it. The one downside to the UL is the fact that it doesn't have great bullet spread accuracy, but there's a lot of attachments that'll allow you to enhance that. And because even the base version has really solid iron sights, you don't really have any need to waste an attachment on a red dot. Add on to that the fact that disable will slow down a shot from anywhere on the body for LMGs, and you've got a perfect LMG that's going to be top tier for anchoring long range positions. Coming in at number 5 is a gun that has been on our top 10 guns videos for the last 2-3 years. I can't even remember at this point. The SKS has been long banned from competitive play because of how ridiculously powerful it is. Can 1-tap to the head from anywhere on the map and very consistently 2-taps to the upper body regardless of your range. I've oscillated back and forth on where I think this should be, and the only reason it's not higher is because it is the most difficult to use option out of all these weapons. Surprisingly enough, there are very few ranked players who have actually managed to master this weapon, but those of you who watched Stage 5 of the World Championships last year saw what type of damage this can do and how ridiculously broken it can be in the hands of the right player. I like to make my SKS build a nice mix of stability while maintaining a little bit of extra ADS speed, but the nice thing about the SKS is you can build it out however your playstyle prefers. Just know that whatever it's going to be, there's going to be some downsides. The one thing I would recommend, use toughness with it. Coming in at number 4 is a super solid AR that has been an option in the meta for a long time. The Kilo has had its ups and downs, but I think right now is one of the best options as far as consistent ARs go. Number 1, because of its rate of fire, having a faster rate of fire than the majority of the other ARs on this list. Number 2, having a buff where it's going to be able to do more upper body damage that makes it a lot more viable for you to be able to 3-tap without landing a headshot. And number 3, the gun's versatility in the number of different situations where it can be used. The one noticeable downside to the Kilo is the fact that it does have pretty sizable vertical recoil. Because of that, I do prefer to run a Ranger foregrip on it. Obviously, that's going to slow you down substantially, but it's absolutely going to be worth it because it, number 1, helps the recoil, but number 2, gives you that extra bullet spread accuracy as well and turns it into an absolute laser beam that can keep up with the best of the best. Coming in at number 3 is the ultimate hybrid AR, one that interestingly enough, when I told people on Twitter that I thought it was a top 10 gun a few seasons ago, I got clowned, and yet here we are. I would say we largely have Garena Pro players to thank for the fact that the Grau is now considered a top 3 weapon in the game. It has ridiculously consistent 4-tap potential in the close to mid range and makes for a phenomenal hybrid AR because it's solid in the close range with its time to kill while being able to maintain that in the long range as well. On top of that, it is the only weapon in the game that has customizable iron sights based on what barrel you're using, and fortunately for you guys, yes, I'm talking to you free-to-play players, the Archangel barrel statistically is the best barrel to use, and it's the one that has the best iron sights. I think there's actually an argument to be made that the Grau is the best free-to-play AR in the game right now, and because of its versatility, there's not really a bad map to use it on. Like I said, in my books, the Archangel is a must-use, and I feel like the majority of the rest of the attachments you're going to use on this are fairly straightforward. The only one that I would say you could possibly change around is if you want to really build for accuracy, go Blackjack instead of Strike Light, but I think that extra little bit of mobility is absolutely worth it for a gun that does play like a hybrid AR. Coming in as our previous number 1 gun in the game and only taken out of that spot, not because of a buff, but because I've finally seen the light about our number 1 gun. The Switchblade is no question the best SMG in COD Mobile right now. Most people don't realize this, but the base version actually functions better than the Mythic version, which can't be said for a whole lot of weapons. Base iron sights are so clean, they don't have a whole lot of aim shake. It's got crazy mobility, crazy 4-tap potential, ridiculously accurate hip fire, and if you land enough headshots, you can actually 3-tap with it as well. The only real downside for the Switchblade is the fact that it doesn't have great bullet spread accuracy, but especially for a hyper-aggressive SMG, in most situations that shouldn't be much of an issue, and because the recoil is super controllable, it 100% still is possible to gun players in the mid-range if you're accurate enough. I've been using the same build for the last year. I feel like I don't need to explain a whole lot. Last but certainly not least, the number 1 gun in Call of Duty Mobile right now is the HVK Large Cal. The only AR in the game that can 2-tap to the head, very consistent 180 millisecond time to kill with the Large Cal when you're landing upper body shots. The large caliber magazine on the HVK was actually banned from competitive recently, and especially after unlocking the cartridge skin, I understand why. I would say this is the only gun that can really be in the conversation of being broken in COD Mobile right now, which is interesting because it actually got a nerf last season that reduced its magazine capacity. Obviously, China Pro players' dominance with this was a big reason why it started to rise, so I'm curious if maybe we see a nerf to this in the upcoming seasons, especially to the headshot multiplier, because a 2-tap AR that shoots as fast as this gun just should not be possible. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this build for everybody because it is very, very slow, but if you want to maximize that 2-shot potential, maximum range is an absolute must. You get the marksman barrel, you get the monolithic suppressor, you get the strike stock. It's full range ahead. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, do me a huge favor, drop a like down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.